Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturient Society.
Welcome back,
Woo!
writers, you beautiful people. And I was like mentally tipping my hat to you as Karissa gave our intro. And I was like for a moment shocked that I'm not wearing a hat that I could tip, as if
Where's
that's
the hat?
something that I've done on any day of
Yeah,
my life before. But I was like, how
totally a hat person.
unreasonable that I'm, yeah, exactly. Because that works really well with curly hair. That's
Mm.
not difficult at all to pull off. Anyways, that over there is Carissa Harlow, aka Lewis, aka Catherine, the dark alter ego that I just love when she makes an appearance. I'm Asha Rourke. No dark alter ego. I am the dark alter ego. Uh, my own dark alter ego, and also Tolkien by several other names, actually, as well. But those are all you need to know for now. The rest are secret. That's not true. You can hear them at thatpretentiousbookclub.com. Or I mean, that's the podcast and the website. Listen. My brain is fried.
You're like, I'm just gonna keep talking till it
Let me
hopefully comes
just
around.
yeah, exactly. I'm like full circle, full circle. This is how I used to write
Yeah.
papers too. I was like, I'm just gonna write until something makes sense, and then you go
Yep.
back and edit. Anyways, Carissa, you can stop me from rambling. Tell me about your week.
Um, I have been stressed. I was kind of telling Ash about it a little bit before. There's no real reason for me to be stressed. Here's what it is. I have too much to do, and I am not Ash, and I don't like to be busy. So I like the joy of life is not to have plans. The joy of life is to have no plans. So
Oh God,
I,
what's that like? I don't remember.
I feel like I'm drowning a little bit, and it's not a lot. It's just a lot compared to the past 20 years of my life all in one week.
Hmm.
So it's like, so obviously we're recording the podcast and then I have church tomorrow and I volunteered at church on Sunday. So yesterday was Monday and it was really my only day where I didn't have anything except I also have work. And Thursday I am calling my aunt and uncle to plan the trip that because they're going to be driving me to my cousin's wedding. So we're going to get those plans worked out. And then also Thursday, I am calling my parents' family, like our family friend, who I'm going to be editing his book. And then
Heck yeah.
Friday, I have small group. And then this weekend is the Festival of Books. And all of that is wonderful. And I'm very excited and I love it. And also, it's way too much. So
Oh my God, I feel it. I
it's,
so feel it. And it's all
yeah,
like a bunch of good things,
yeah,
but it's just so
it's,
many things all at the same time.
yeah, it's not like, oh, I want to drop this thing and I'm not even dreading any of it. It's just like I have I feel like I have
So
no free
much.
time coming up.
Yep.
And I do because next Monday I will have free time. But it's so much in one week and I don't do well with
Hmm.
that. And
Yeah.
then next week, also, I have in the next couple weeks, I have doctor's appointments. And I don't get actively stressed about those, but they just add that little bit extra in the background. Like, what if I'm dying and don't know it yet? So,
Hmm. Yep.
yeah.
That's
But yeah,
fair.
it's not that there's actually, I mean, that is a lot, especially for me. And like, I am working every day. And
Yeah.
also at work, I'm getting trained on new kinds of reports, which is very exciting, but then also something that's in my brain. So
There's a lot of things taking
it's
up
just
brain
more.
space right now.
Yeah,
Your brain
it's
is
just a
kind of
lot
at
at
max
once.
capacity.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm writing another book. So, and that's like where my brain wants to be. You know what I mean? And
Yes, I do
so
actually.
yeah, so I'm like excited about all this stuff, but I'm especially excited about writing. And that's like the one thing I don't really have time to do this week, which is just it's a thing. So
I understand completely.
anyway, yeah, it's
Question for
fun.
you. Is this cousin's wedding the one that you said that you might try to come see me?
It is, but I probably won't be able to do it the same trip because I'm doing road trip and that will take more days. I know.
Unbelievable.
I know. I am gonna come at some
Your
point.
nephew is over here. He's gonna
I
chew you
know.
out.
I know.
He's looking at me like, what? I'm gonna do what? Your
Maybe
Auntie
by the time
Carissa chose a road trip over us, Baba.
I chose my cousin over you, that's different.
She chose her cousin over us, Baba. He's smiling. He doesn't understand. It's because he's a
It's like
baby.
cool. By the time I see him, he will be getting married. So
I thought you were gonna say like walking or something, but yeah, getting
yeah.
married. That sounds about
Let's
right
be
too.
let's just exaggerate a little bit. So,
Yep.
I mean, I plan to show up in Texas at some point, but who knows when. So,
I mean, I'll be here,
I know.
but
Oh, and
gosh.
we're moving. That's also another stress because
Oh
so
yeah.
have you ever looked at there's like this list of like life stressors and it's like if they're each worth a certain amount of points and if you hit a certain amount of points in a
Interesting.
year, that's
You
like
have a
when
heart attack.
well yeah, it's like
Not
when
you
they suggest
specifically, I mean
therapy.
anyone.
Yeah. But they just like have like go to therapy or do this thing to get through the stress because you're only like the human mind is only supposed to be able to take so many points and moving
Ah.
is one of them and like good things are too like getting married and graduating school like these are
Yeah.
also stressors because they provide stress in your life and
Yeah.
so we're moving in probably about a month and that's
That is
exciting and
so
great
exciting.
and I'm excited about the house and I'm excited to get all my books set up on the shelves again because if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see there's nothing behind me and it's really depressing. And this is what I've been living in for the past like 3 months and I hate
Yeah,
it.
she's been living in
Um,
my kind of world. No books behind you. These are all fake, if you guys couldn't tell.
well, it's better than nothing. And this is also the house that I grew up in that we're leaving.
Oh,
And so I'm like,
yeah. I
it
can't
just hit
fathom
me
that.
yesterday. I know yesterday I was sitting there and I was like, I'm eventually like in a couple months I'm gonna never see this house again. And I'm like, nope, can't do it right now. Too stressed. We'll process that next week. So
Yeah, that's definitely a later thing to process.
so it's like good things, but still stressful. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's where I'm at. How's your week?
Well,
Weeks.
um, boy, oh boy. My brain is a fried egg. I've probably said that before, but that's just how it feels. Last week I said my brain was just like a bunch of uncooked noodles. So I don't know which is worse. I want to say the fried egg is worse because I also feel kind of like my heart palpitations just won't stop.
Oh.
Um, that there's a lot of things happening right now at once. All
Mhm.
very good things, mostly. Uh, but oh my God, it's too much at once. There, we recently our my company had to let go of a bunch of people due to some nonsense with a government partner, and it was just ridiculous. Basically, largely not the company's fault, and I have never seen a company be so transparent and like compassionate about having to lay people off. Like they really,
Mhm.
if there's a way to lay people off the right way, I will say they did it. But the problem is that leaves me and one other person with the work of like around 11 people. And
Ooh.
more things also. So
Mhm.
I am last week I was like, cool, I'm really great in like a crisis, right? So I was like, I'm managing, it's fine. I don't even feel the stress. And then this week I was like, I'm feeling a little bit of the stress. And then today I was like, I'm drowning in stress.
It finally hits you and you're like, how long have I felt this way? It could have been weeks.
Could have literally been weeks. Yeah. And I just like every time I love checking things off my to-do list. And that's why they like me at work, is because it makes me very productive. I am
Mhm.
at the place where I check one thing off my to-do list and then like four other things get added. And that's
Yeah.
been every single day. So my like daily to-do list, not even like my overall like weekly, monthly, quarterly. It is my daily to-do list is pages long that I have to scroll through. And like
Ugh.
none of these projects left, like very few of them are like, oh, I just have to like complete this one task. They're all like multitask, several levels of review, got to coordinate with other teams, which drives me crazy because not that they're not great people, but like I work at this one speed and
Yeah.
everyone else works a much slower speed than
You're
I
like, come
will.
on, people, pick it up.
Like, come on. Well, because also like it's so funny when somebody requests like a deliverable of some kind, right? Because I work in like marketing, writing, and stuff and project management. So they'll like request something and then they're like, we need it tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, here is the copy. I need you to review it so I can send it to design so we can get this ready for you by tomorrow. And then they just don't ever get back to you. And the next day they're like, so what's the status? We need the deliverable. And I'm like, I need you to review the copy.
It's on you. The ball is in your court,
Yep.
sir.
Yep. So
Yeah.
that's it's just fun.
Mm.
Whatever. I'm very, very grateful to have a job. I love my job. I love the people I work for and work with. I have an excellent team member. I don't think she listens to this, but if she's out there, Courtney, what up, girl? She is one of the few people I've ever met who also can work kind of at my speed. And
Mhm.
yeah, she's just highly competent, very capable. But I feel like we're both just like I want to say like just barely keeping our heads above water, but not even. Like we are we are underwater. And
Oh,
I need to get her address in a non-creepy way because I want to send her some champagne. Because
oh,
there's this project, this
thank you.
huge project that's coming up that like it's just about like the finale basically is coming up. Like we're
Mm,
basically done with all of the worst parts. So before
yeah.
we start working on phase 2 of that same very taxing project, I want to just like send her like a little like care package or something. So
Mm,
I gotta find a non-creepy way to get her address. Um,
yeah.
yeah. And then, so that's been so much of my life. It's planting season. I think I mentioned that last time.
Hmm.
Javi and I skipped church on Sunday which also means I skipped my socialization for the week. To, I know, Riley. He's like, and mine, mom.
Excuse me.
Like, I get so many snuggles at church. You deprived me of those.
Surprised me. How dare
I
you?
know. I
But you
know.
looked so cute in your little farmhand outfit, Riley.
Yeah, he was
So,
a little farmhand. Well, he was supposed to be a farmhand, but he kind of just turned into like the supervisor. He sat in his little chair while on Sunday, his father and I basically tore up a whole acre's worth of the effort that I put in last year, which
mhm.
was more successful than the year before with the garden. It's just every year we get better at the garden. Sorry, my child is gassy and it's making him angry. You know, you know how it is.
Relatable.
Um, is that relatable, Papa? He's looking at Karissa right now, so everything's okay for a second. He loves pretty ladies. Remind me to tell you a funny thing about that. God, my brain is in 100 million places. I'm so sorry. So, anyways, we tore up all that work. It was backbreaking, laborious, and it is very warm outside now. It's like 80 degrees. I can't believe you're wearing like a turtleneck over there. You're in Arizona. You're not
I
even like
don't
up
want
north.
to do more laundry, so if the day starts cold, I'm just hot for the rest of the day.
That's
So,
hilarious. I do kind
long
of get that
sleeves.
though. So I've been
Yeah.
just wearing like t-shirts and shorts and tank tops, and I'm like, if it gets a little cold, I'm just gonna be cold and put on
Yep.
a blanket because
It's all I
I'm
have
not
the energy to
doing.
do.
Yep. And I did. I ended up putting away all of my winter clothes. So that was also a task that I had to do was pull
Mhm.
out my summer clothes and put away my winter clothes, many of which don't fit me because I was pregnant and now I'm not. But it takes your body a while to bounce back. Um, Thanks, Riley. Riley's like, yeah, I grew all my clothes too. He actually did. He's wearing 9 month and 12 month things. He will turn 5 months tomorrow for anyone who's keeping up
Oh,
with the enormous baby update.
saying he feels like he should be coming up on his first birthday, and he's not even 6 months.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's true. And we did go to one of his little cousin's birthday parties the other day, and she was turning one, and he is her size, if not bigger. Actually, I want to say bigger. He's bigger.
wow.
So, not that he's bigger than every 1 year old, but I do think he's bigger than a portion of them and bigger than many, many 8 and 9 month olds and 10 month olds.
And certainly
um,
most of the 5 months old, 5 month
and
olds.
certainly almost all of the 5 month olds. Although also fun, it was funny at the birthday party we ran into another couple and they had a 6 month old and he was also an enormous baby and I was like another
It's not just
giant
us.
baby. It was amazing. It was so
Phew.
funny.
It's not just our kid.
I know there's other giants out there. It's good to know. Okay, so anyway, so we worked on the garden. Javi is building me some beautiful raised beds. So we got 2 of them set up. So that's so exciting. And then we're gonna put gravel between the paths, and then we're gonna actually fill the boxes, which will make like maintaining just so much easier. So maybe we actually can go to the farmer's market, which would be great because my chickens have chosen this time to just get so on the go with making the eggs. Like we are
Oh,
getting high about 15 eggs a day, which
oh
is
wow.
so much more than we can do anything with. Have you ever used 15 eggs in a day? Because I haven't.
Maybe one
So,
day, not many in a row.
yeah, many days in a row. And so I'm basically, hubby's going to go to drill soon. And I was like, just ask people for orders, please. I'm begging you to like get some orders. I can't ask people at church because there's already my child suddenly so happy to see my face. I don't know what changed. Um, Someone at church already like sells eggs. So I'm like, I don't want to like step on
Oh,
her turf, Like this is
mm.
church, I
Undercut
don't,
her.
yeah, I don't
Give
want to
you
like
10 cents
undercut her.
cheaper.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, we're getting a little too close to that, like reliving the Jesus flipping the tables, like
Yeah,
of
fair
like the money
enough.
changers or whatever.
Like, oh,
So
let's just stop that before it begins.
yeah, so I was like, oh, I can't do that. All right.
Mm.
Um, Anyways, so that's been life. And I was thinking I was gonna do the thing that you do where you're like, and I wrote a whole book, surprise. But I don't know how long it's gonna take me. But I will say, and I'll save most of my update for the writing update corner or whatever. But I did start writing a new book. And
Yeah.
everyone hush about the book that I have not finished yet. Shh, shh, shh. I'll get back to it, I promise, probably.
Hmm.
This book I already have multiple chapters of. It's a thriller, and I'm excited. And I will drop some hot tips for being a parent trying to write a book. Very, very busy. Also, parent. Like, not that any parent
I'm
isn't busy,
sure.
but like, I feel like I'm going through a particularly insane period. Like, I've been working about like easily over 60 hours a week at my just
Yeah.
normal job. I still
Mhm.
have a farm and a family and the
Yeah.
occasional life commitment. I know. I know. And sometimes my child wants me to look at him and speak to him.
Ugh,
So
annoying.
I
On the
know.
bright side, that curl in your hair looks amazing. I don't know if you
Oh,
can.
this thing?
Yeah, I like it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
Little
that because
side curl.
I appreciate that. I'm looking a little rough today, so I'm appreciating. Thank you, the compliment.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's I guess that's basically been my 2 weeks. I feel like there's more. It just feels like I feel like I've lived 6 months in the last 2 weeks. It's not often I feel like
Yeah.
that, but this has
I don't
been
know. It's
that.
maybe it's like a spring thing, but
Maybe
I
it
feel that way
is.
too. So
Yeah.
it's just a vibe in the world that
Yeah.
I feel way more stressed than I should about. More than usual, but not enough for the level of stress I feel, you know?
Yeah. That's kind of how I feel like. Like all day long, I've been like, is this what it feels like before you have a heart attack? Which I know it's not. There's no way.
Yeah.
But oh my God, like I've been like
Yeah.
so stressed. I'm like, okay, Ash, like we have handled many stressful things before. Okay, so work is a little
Exactly.
stressful. We have some deadlines coming up with some farm stuff. You have a child, but he's easy as pie. Like I
Mhm.
you're fine. You need to
It's
calm down.
fine.
And my
And
body's like,
last
what
night,
if the world is ending? It
yeah,
could
yeah,
be. It
what if we're
probably
not though?
is. Yeah.
Last night I had a dream that I bled out. And I was like, is this a sign of something?
That's
Like that's how I
hysterical.
feel a little bit. And I
Hmm.
don't know why.
I have also been having very stressful dreams. Very stressful for
Hmm.
like the last month, long before I've been this level of stressed. I've been having stressful dreams. The other day I dreamed I was holding someone's child, not my own, like a 2 month old baby girl, and I was on this like school bus, like with a bunch of other people, like a bunch of adults. Then all of a sudden it was nighttime and we were on a cliff and there was a hurricane and the windows were like blowing in. And so I was
Oh
like,
no.
everyone get down. And so we all got down, like it tried to like shield, like cover our heads and like
Hmm.
shield ourselves from the storm. So I was trying to shield the baby. Then all of a sudden someone's like, what are you doing? And I look up and there's no storm. The windows are intact. It's daytime and there's a person sitting next to me and they're holding the baby girl and they're like, what's going on? What are you doing? And I'm like,
This is
what the hell?
actively my fear. This is why when stuff goes wrong around me, my initial assumption is just it's probably fine, don't get involved. Like there could be a straight up fire in the room and I'd be like, let's just see if it goes away because I'm so afraid of people like thinking I'm crazy, like
Oh, that's
for,
hysterical.
crying wolf essentially. It's so
Uh-huh.
silly. But
Oh, that is
yeah.
interesting. I
Hmm.
have not had that fear ever. I was like, I'm annoyed at all of these jokers, these
Yeah.
yahoos who refuse to acknowledge that we were just in the middle of a hurricane, which was
They
very
were here.
real.
I know they were.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh
Ugh.
God. But yeah, so stressful
Mm.
weeks for the two of us. I
Yeah.
think it's perhaps time for a calming, cup of tea. For me over here, it's a whiskey sour, heavy on the whiskey.
Nice.
And yeah, hopefully some baby snuggles later on, because that's always good.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah, the
Oh
baby
yeah,
snuggles help.
also, it was Aurora's birthday this last week. So she
Aurora!
and Luna's is in a couple days and she's gonna be
Oh,
2. And they're
oh my
so cute.
goodness.
And I love them, even though they're, they're basically just teenagers at this point. They're
Oh
kind of annoying
God.
sometimes, but they're also the best. So
Aw, that's such a
happy
sweet thing to
birthday to
say
them.
about teenagers.
I know. I'm
Oh,
like,
that's
you're
so funny.
basically 14 now. I can gauge that. I know. I
Is
remember
it
what that was like.
is it too early for me to be stressed about my child dating and also like early to be stressed about like what if he marries a woman who takes him away from me?
Mm,
Because
a
I have
little,
it's a little early. Okay. Okay,
a
so
couple
I'll
years.
save that for later. And I have
Yeah.
always hated that thing about like the moms who are like, you're not good enough for my son. And I'm like, well, I see why, like the daughter or the wife, whatever, doesn't want the mother-in-law to come over for the holidays. And I'm like, I don't want
Mhm.
to be that way. But also I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna get
Like,
married
what
and
if I
leave
am?
me.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Aw,
It
what
is
an
hard.
interesting concern.
It's very strange. It's very You know, right when you think you're the most rational and logical person in the world, you're just
Like,
like
nope.
biological instincts kick in, and you're
Yeah.
like, I'm just an animal. I'm only a
Yeah.
mammal. I can only do so
I
much.
have no control.
Oh,
Uh,
God. Anyways, I guess we should get into some more literary related things. Do you
hmm,
have any book recommendations?
I don't. Um, I did. This is sort of related. I'm gonna show it to you on the video. I got a new Bible because I was
Ooh,
stressed and I was like, this feels like a good solution. So I normally read the New King James because I love it. And part of me is like
said the only person
concerned.
ever in all of
I know.
history.
I did meet a guy at church. He's like, I just really like the King James version. I'm like, wow, that's so
Would you like to get
interesting.
married?
Yeah, exactly. Except he was a lot older than me.
Oh,
Um,
I
but I
mean,
got,
was there
you
money?
know, this. I mean, he bought a Bible. Bibles are not cheap if you buy them with fancy covers. Just
You
saying.
know what? Yeah, might have been
So
a missed opportunity.
who
Just
knows?
saying.
Maybe he goes there and I'll see him again. But
Mhm.
I normally feel like like I'm betraying the New King James Version if I read another version, which is probably the stupidest thing that happens in my head, like the most
That's
irrational thing, because
hysterical.
it's not even like the original words. Like it's not even the original. It's not even
Yeah.
the original English translation because that would be the King James.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why I feel that way. I just got really attached to it, I think, because it was like the first version I
This makes
read.
sense for you.
And
You're
like
very
I
dedicated.
do I seem like a New King James version? I think I do. I think that fits for me.
It does,
So, I don't know.
absolutely. It was a
So I got
personality trait for you.
yeah. And like it makes sense. I feel like if I told people
Bless
that's
you.
the version I read, they would be like,
Bless you.
"Yeah, that
That makes
jives."
sense. That tracks.
Yeah. But I saw this one and it's so pretty. It has like a flower and it's like a rose gold kind of
Ooh.
thing. And it's the New Living translation.
Oh, that one's
And
interesting.
yes, so I also have the spine. I don't even know if you can see it well, but
Ooh.
it called to me from the shelves and I bought it.
Wow.
And I
Nice.
figure this will help me get back into the habit of reading it every day because I haven't been doing it since I got my wisdom teeth out, which was like 2 years ago. So
Oh, that's
I'm
funny.
like, I need something to mix it up to get back into it. So,
Yep.
and now I'm going to collect Bibles. That's my new goal in life. I just want to collect one of every version.
That's very
So,
cool.
yeah,
That's fun.
that's a
I
new goal for
have
me, lifelong.
I treated myself to a new Bible that is it's like really big. It's just the New
Ooh,
Testament. Sorry, I just spoke to my child in the
mm,
eye. It's okay. He's resilient. He'll be fine.
he's cool.
He's cool. Like he's like, okay.
Okay, that's
Um,
nice.
it's a giant spiral version of the New Testament, and it's got like a huge note-taking section.
Ah,
And
yeah,
I love it. So you can
cool.
like fold it open and like all the way
Hmm.
open and like write and take notes because usually I'm like struggling to like put my notes in the little bitty
In the
margins. So,
margins. Yep.
because if I don't write something down, I will forget it. That's just how it works. I have to write something about it or I won't remember. Um,
Hmm.
or at least not in any meaningful way. So I'm super excited. I think it's also the New Living Translation, which is I was resistant to it first, and then I was like, oh, Ash, you know what? Everybody has been
Ash.
resistant to like the
It's
new
true.
quote unquote translations, but it's just, but like you said, even the King James is a new translation of other
Hmm.
languages and other versions. So it's
Yeah.
so silly to be like, well, I can't read the new one because it's probably not accurate. And it's like,
It's
well,
be- because like okay, this is something that bothers me too is that sometimes when people talk about Bible translations, they're like they just translated it from the New King James. I'm like, literally no. They go back to the original like what is it? Aramaic and
in
Hebrew and
Hebrew.
Greek. Like they
Yep.
go back to the original ones and then do a new translation with a new like
Hmm.
understandings and
Yep.
new like colloquial
Context.
yeah, like new context and stuff. So, like, it's still a direct translation. It's
Yep.
just one that was done more recently in time.
Yep.
So,
I
so
like
weird.
it. I think it's genius. But yeah, I do. It's funny. It's an instinct, but then you have to kind of like correct the instinct. Like not all
Mhm.
instincts are correct. Remember
Yep.
that, Ash, when your child is, getting married to someone, not all instincts are correct. Just because she
You
loves
can
him
chill.
doesn't mean that she's going to take him away from you.
She might love you too. So,
God, I really hope so. So then I'm like, I've literally gone through these scenarios in my head already because I've been like, but then Ash, if you come on too strong, like if you try too hard to let her know that you
you'll
love
push her
her,
away.
like exactly. I've literally, my child is 5 months old tomorrow.
Oh my gosh. That is pretty funny.
Yeah, it's a little bit funny. Anyways, okay, I'll get into my book recs now.
Yes.
Okay, so I've been updating you guys on No Beauties or Monsters by Tara
Hmm.
Gojin. Finished
Yes.
it. This isn't that pretentious book club, but I'm gonna have to rate it the way that we do over there, which is by pinkies up, with 5 being the highest,
Hmm.
obviously, and best, 1 being the lowest. I'll never rate it again. Um, No Beauties, No Monsters. Honestly, like I was tracking like around 4 pinkies up, which is pretty high for most of this book. And then we hit like the last like fifth of
Oh
the book.
no.
And I was
Yeah.
like, what? What is
Something
happening? I'm sorry.
changed.
Excuse me? It's like to the point where I was like, am I gonna drop this to like below a 3, like a
Oh,
2.5? Like,
yeah.
and that's probably not fair. I feel I need you to read it and tell me because it's one of
Mhm.
two things. Either the ending is a total cop out because the author wrote herself into a corner and couldn't write herself back out without some unrealistic stuff, or
Sure.
I do not have the intellectual capacity to comprehend nor have predicted any signs that this was going to be the outcome
Mm.
like
It
coming
like
up
so
to it.
like it feels like a Deus Ex Machina. It feels like it's coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, it felt like it came
Yeah.
out of nowhere completely, like the answers to it all. And I felt like there was
Hmm.
no like lead up, like the big twist basically that was like right before the ending. I feel like there was
Hmm.
no hints dropped about it. So I felt like,
Right.
what? But it's very possible I just so didn't expect it that I didn't pick up on any of the signs. It's
Right.
possible. So I guess I'll give it hesitantly a 3 pinkies. I'm leaning towards a 2.75 pinkies up.
Oh,
This is why I need you to read it for me because until the last fifth, I was like, this is really good.
yeah.
And I guess I mean, I still enjoyed up to that point. So I guess it's still a decent read, which is why I'll give it the 3 pinkies up. But anyway, so that's basically the finale of the book rec that I've been making to you guys. I know you've all
Yeah.
been waiting with bated breath for me to finish. And now I'll give you a new book rec in progress because that's just what I'm doing now. New book rec in
Sure.
progress is First Lie Wins by
Mm.
Ashley something.
Is that a
I
thriller?
forget. It is. It's a
Ooh.
thriller. And it is so interesting. And it's got twists, but then when you get to the twist, you're like, oh my God, I should have totally seen that coming.
Yeah.
The kind of twist you want.
Hmm.
It's very interesting. I'm like a third of the way through, and currently I'm like, this is really, really good. So it's a
Cool.
thriller. It's very interesting. It's like a new adult thriller also, which is fun. So it's because a lot of like adult thrillers are like, they're in their late 30s or early 40s. And it's like, okay, well, you know,
Not there yet.
there are people who are between the ages of 18 and 38. There's like a
Hmm.
whole chunk of
Quite a
people
bit.
there. Yeah. So that's enjoyable. So that's my current book rec in progress. But if you don't have one, I guess we can move on to word of the week.
Yeah. Word of the week is, I feel like I'm going to butcher this because it's Italian. Dormiveglia? Dormiveglia. And so,
Dormiveglia.
oh, okay. Dormiveglia. And this means half asleep or semi-conscious, the state between sleeping and waking. And
Dormiveglia. Interesting.
no, and so apparently we don't have a word for it in English. So I think we need to appropriate this word like we did burrito and bring it into the English language.
Oh, I listen up, Italians out there. Carissa just compared the beautiful, poetic Italian word dormiveglia to burrito. And I
Yeah.
love it. I am so on board. Let's do it.
Yeah.
First of all, because yes, in a very real sense, dormiveglia is, yeah, that's an excellent word.
It
And
is.
it's so weird that we don't have a concept, like we don't have a word that describes
Right?
that in English.
That's a
So we
state of
should
being.
absolutely appropriate it. I just really love that you compared it to the word burrito. That
Yeah.
makes me very happy.
Yep. I mean, so many of the Spanish food words that we use are like not English, and we pronounce them like they're English. We don't pronounce them right.
No.
So,
Burrito, taquito, enchilada, chili relleno. Sorry,
Yes.
Releno.
It is so funny. So, like, I'm in Tucson, so there's a really strong, like, Hispanic population here. And one of the girls in my
Mhm.
small group is Hispanic. And it's so funny when they just throw in, like, the correct pronunciations for these words.
Oh my
She's just
God, I
talking
know.
to us and she's like the proper pronunciation of tortilla, just in the middle of this English sentence. And I'm like,
Tortilla.
whoa, give me a
Can't even
sec.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It blows my mind too because we're in South Central Texas, so also
Hmm.
very, very heavy Mexican and Hispanic population here. So same
Yep.
thing. All of a sudden, someone who's, like their family's Mexican or whatever, they'll come in and say something and some like word like enchilada or chili relleno.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I felt like I was pronouncing it decently, all right, like
Right?
chili relleno. But
Yeah, it
no,
was
then they say it and
close.
you're like, oh my God, say it again. It was beautiful.
Like it's your native language.
It's so pretty the way they
It's
make it
beautiful.
sound. I just sound
Yeah.
like, ugly
I just
American
don't
trying to speak
try.
another language. Yeah, and I have
Yeah.
had this debate before. Like, is it better to not try or
Hmm.
try? Because
Yeah.
is it offensive to try and mess it up? Or is it like, oh, at least she tried? And I've
Yeah.
had this even with Italian. My family is Italian. I grew up speaking Italian. Am I currently
Hmm.
fluent? I realized the other day, probably not anymore. I still speak some Italian though. And
Hmm.
if we go to an Italian restaurant, I'm like, Ash, don't you dare pronounce something on
Don't do
this
it.
menu
Don't do it.
correctly because you will look like the ultimate poser, even though you
Yeah.
have ordered this dish in Italy, in Italian.
And you are Italian. Dang
You
it.
are. But I'm like, they're all going to think you're a poser, Ash. And it's
Hmm.
weird because I'm usually like, I don't care what people think about me. And then we get to like, for some reason, that language thing, I'm like, they're going to think you're so pretentious. And also, they're not
Yep.
even going to know that you're pronouncing it correctly. Like,
They're
okay,
trying too hard, and you don't want people to know you're trying too hard, but you're not trying too
exactly.
hard. You're just trying a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, it's really for me not trying too hard. Now I'm trying too hard because I'm thinking about it. But before, if I had just said
Exactly.
it the way it's supposed to be, it'd be like, ah, okay. So
Hmm.
maybe upon this discussion, now I'm like, maybe that answers all my questions and I should just pronounce it however the heck I want and
I
not
know. I just think
worry.
there's a way to pronounce English words that are not English words. How do I say this? Like the words we have taken into the English language without taking them, we pronounce them differently to the point where they're like basically a different word.
Yep.
So I just feel like we should just go with that.
Yep.
I wouldn't mind it if someone else did that with English. If you need to
I wouldn't
pronounce
mind
something
either.
wrong because it fits in the language, go for it.
Yep.
So
But
I don't know.
I also wouldn't be offended if somebody tried to pronounce a word in English that's difficult and they did it wrong, you know? Like you
Hmm.
ever heard of like someone who speaks German try and say the word squirrel? Like that's
No.
awesome. It's hysterical. It's very funny. But I'm never like, "Oh, what an idiot." You know? I'm
Right.
like, "Oh my
You're
God,
like,
that's
good try.
adorable."
That's
You're like, "You're
cool.
so close. Nice work."
Yeah.
So cute. So I don't know. I don't I the thing is I feel that people just really don't like Americans, so there's some like natural bias there, but maybe I should just not care. And when people say bruschetta, I can be like it's actually bruschetta. And it's
Yeah.
so weird to me that people say bruschetta. I'm like, "What? Wait,
That is
what?"
weird.
Oh.
Bruschetta.
Cuz it's not even that hard to Americanize it and say
It's
bruschetta.
not.
Like, you don't want to say like
What an interesting
bruschetta.
direction.
I know. And they're like bruschetta and I'm like, "No, it's not
You're
even as
so
pretty."
far.
So far off. Ugh. Anyways, all
Uh,
this from Dormiveglia, which is
yep.
what is it? What was it again? The state
Half,
between
yeah, the
waking,
state
sleeping.
between sleeping and waking. So half asleep,
Ugh.
semi-conscious, basically.
I feel like I've been living in a state of Dormiveglia since I had my child.
Yeah.
Actually, since like a month before I had him.
Yeah.
My life's been very Dormiveglia-y.
I was gonna say you did it, you used it right, and then you ruined it.
I know. I was trying to find a way to ruin it. It's always easy to ruin it by making it like an adverb or something.
It's true.
Dormiveglia-y. It's a Dormiveglia-y. Riley's definitely trying to pull my microphone off the desk. It's heavier than you are, haha, at least for now. Anyways,
For the time being.
for the time being, do you want to get into our theme for today's episode?
Yes, I'm very excited about this one. We're gonna talk about frame stories. Woo! I don't know why I did jazz hands. Um,
Well, I did a sports siren thing as if I've
yeah,
ever been to a sporting event willingly, which I have not.
which I have not. Yeah, we're gonna talk about frame stories, and mostly because the book I am writing is it contains frame stories, if that makes sense. So I wanted to talk about it.
I love it. Do you
Um,
want to educate us all on what a frame story is?
yeah, so a frame story is like when I came up with a bunch of examples to explain it because my brain wasn't really working earlier. Hopefully I'll wing my way there. So you've got like the Canterbury Tales is a good example if you like
Oh
classics.
yeah.
Frankenstein is also a frame story. Tenant of Wildfell Hall, Wuthering Heights.
Old Man in the
About
Sea, is that one?
yes, I think so, if I remember
Or
that
is
one
it Moby
correctly.
Dick? Which one is it? Are they both? Or
Mo
just one of them?
Mo
Right? I'm like,
I read
wait,
both of them and I
I
don't
know.
remember.
Same,
Books about the
same.
sea don't stick in my mind, which is strange, but anyway.
You're like, who cares about the sea? I live in the desert.
Yeah, I don't see water. Um, A Thousand and One Nights is another good example.
Oh
I've
yeah.
heard Name of the Wind is one, by Patrick, is that Rothfuss? Princess Bride. Um, what else? Forrest Gump. It's a movie, but that one is
Still a
also a
frame
frame
story.
story.
Yeah.
Mhm. So it's basically when you start out with like this kind of big picture story, and then one of the characters in that story starts telling another story, maybe a series of stories, maybe some episodic stories, maybe just one big story. Forrest Gump is kind of episodic. Princess Bride is like one big story. An anthology would be an example, a frame story and kind of link all the stories in an anthology together. Um, so you use that frame story as the vehicle to tell the central story. So I'm calling it, I don't know if that's its actual name. Um, and then it kind of comes full circle. So that central story will end and then the frame story will end. And so a
Yep.
lot of times that central story has a similar theme or adds to the frame story in some way. And there are
Yeah.
a lot of different ways to do that. So does
It's
that
not
seem
exactly
sufficient?
relevant to what you were just saying, but I do have to say that I love that you pronounced the H in vehicle.
Did I?
You did. You said
Vehicle.
vehicle. Ah, you
Yeah.
did it again. Vehicle.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Look
How do
at
you
you, so
pronounce
proper.
the place where you park your car
A
in your
parking
house?
spot? Oh, in your
No, like
house? A
yeah, the room.
garage?
You say it like my dad does.
Garage?
I say garage,
Garage.
garage,
Garage.
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 That's so weird. My dad, he's from Illinois and he says garage. So he like has that hard J at the end, kind of
Yeah,
like you were doing.
garage.
But and my mom and I are like garage, where it's like almost an SH. Garage.
Nah, garage.
Yep.
Get it?
So interesting.
How do you say garbage? Garbage?
No, it's just garbage, obviously.
Oh my God, obviously. Ooh, that's
So
funny. Do you say
I
foyer or foyer?
I say foyer. What do you
I
say?
honestly, I don't talk about them that much.
You're like, I don't have an answer. I just want to know what you think.
I've been debating my whole life which one is correct, and I don't really use it that much, so I've never come to a conclusion.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I was writing the last book I wrote, I was writing about a conservatory. For some reason, I was pronouncing it right, but I for some reason I have been thinking my entire life that a conservatory is a music room. And it's not, it's like a greenhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So because I was thinking like a music conservatory, like where you go to school, so I'm like that's
Yeah.
obviously what that means.
Yeah.
No, so I had to go back through the whole book and be like, no, we're just calling that a music room, which is a boring word and I don't think there's a fun word for it.
Should have looked
So
up one in Italian. I'm sure they'd have one.
that's true. Foreign languages, that's where we need to go for new vocabulary.
Yeah, I like
So
it. Might as well. I
yep,
mean, that's kind of our thing as America to bastardize things from other
it's
cultures.
true.
Just go with
It's
our
true.
what we're good at, you know?
Yeah, we've mastered it. We know how to do it right.
Yeah, exactly. Um, okay, so frame stories. Yeah, I'm pretty
Yes.
sure Old Man of the Sea, Man in the Sea, and possibly Moby Dick are also
Mhm.
frame stories. Trying to think of some modern like frame stories.
This is the thing. I feel like not a lot of modern stories
Not.
use them. And I
They
think
really
it's
don't.
because it's a little more, I don't know, I don't want to say it's not like a super highbrow, like pretentious thing to do, but it is like
Mm-mm.
this extra layer that readers are going to have to get past. And I don't know, sometimes readers are like, attention deficit and they don't want to sit and wait
Yeah.
that long for the answer. Because like a big reason to do a frame story is it creates anticipation for that outer frame, right? So think of Forrest
Yeah.
Gump. I think this is a good example because I feel like most people have seen it. He starts telling the story, and you're constantly kind of thinking, like, why is he at this bus stop? Like you're kind of getting a sense of why he's sitting there and learning about his life in the past and stuff, but you have this suspense in the back of your mind the whole time. Why is he at this bus stop? Where is he going? And so you have to wait the whole movie basically to figure that out, even though you're getting hints and the central stories are kind of explaining like the background to understand where he's
Yeah.
going when you finally get there. Um, so it creates that anticipation. And I think sometimes authors don't think that readers will pay attention that long, which I don't know how true that. I think that just depends on the reader.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think there's that, and I also wonder if authors these days are just not as aware of the frame
um,
story. Like
yeah,
maybe
they
if
just don't
you
think
if
of
you
it.
got a degree in literature and you read and studied things with the frame story, maybe, but it's not like you have to get a degree specifically in English literature to be an author. So I don't know, maybe people aren't as aware that this exists.
It's true. If We Were Villains is a frame story. I forgot about that one.
Yes. Yes, if
That's a
we were
modern example.
villains. Yes, it is. And it's
Yep.
excellently done.
Yes.
So there's definitely, I mean, that alone is absolutely proof that it's very possible. It's kind of like when an episode starts and it shows you like something shocking and then it goes 3 days before. And then it'll
Yeah.
like start over basically telling the story from 3 days prior and then it catches up to where you are. That's
Hmm.
basically
Or
because
the
when you
frame
do it,
story tangential thing. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Because it's not exactly a flashback when it is the entire episode or like the
Right.
entire story. When I feel like it's like the majority of the story content, I would consider that a frame story, not a flashback. Because a flashback is supposed to be sort of like shorter, like a much shorter than that
Hmm.
type of thing. I agree. Frame stories are very interesting and are not used very much, but could
Hmm.
be. It's
Yeah.
definitely not hard. I think the thing, though, to remember, and of course, ML Rio did this beautifully in If We Were Villains, like she did everything with that book, is have we
Hmm.
mentioned that we love If We Were Villains?
Yeah.
Anyways, is that you have to kind of like it's a little confusing because you have to like create sort of like an overarching plot for the frame
Yeah.
story and individually for the like primary story. It's happening
Hmm.
within the frame story, and you have to tie them together. And the
Hmm.
conclusion of the frame story or whatever has to satisfy the climax of the framing story, if
Yeah,
any of
like the
that
center
makes
has
sense.
to help the frame story kind of come to
Yeah,
its conclusion. Yeah, and like
exactly.
the strategy in Forrest Gump and in If We Were Villains is kind of we're going to use the frame story or we're going to use the central story to get at the backstory, right? Which is a
Yeah.
good strategy and that can really
Yeah.
work. And I think that's a really good way to tell a story that's going to go back and forth from
Yep.
the past and the future, which is a thing that I see in a lot of, I think, young adult books where and probably just kind of the general market right now, where it's like then and now, or
Yeah.
it'll, I think one of John Green's books does that. Is that Looking for Alaska? Or I don't know. One of them does that. Or like it'll say, 1980 and then 2000 or whatever, and you
Yeah.
kind of flip back and forth. That's kind of like it's not a frame story, but it's kind of like the level up of a frame
Yeah.
story
Well, if the
where they're
back
more
then
equal.
part was the majority of the book, I would think that it is a frame story. Like this book I'm
Yeah.
reading now, if the majority, because it also does like the present day and then like the different date. If the majority of the book was these like past recollections that she's having, I would consider that a frame story, but it's not. It's probably about equal or maybe a little more skewed towards the present day. Um,
Mhm.
but it would be, I don't know. There's so much potential for a book that is primarily like, the quote unquote backstory. It's basically kind of like to write a frame story, quote unquote. If the primary story that you're telling is about the person who's telling the frame story, because it doesn't have to be. It could
Mhm.
be that the frame story is like Princess Bride, someone telling a story about someone else. But
Yes.
it's often, and I really like it when it's someone telling basically their own story. And so it's kind of like if that's the case, then you're starting with your frame. It's the book starts with the person or character basically kind of giving you some context for where they ended up without
Yeah.
any context at all of where they started. Maybe there's
Hmm.
like an interesting little like something in there, like that you
Like you're
can't
in
quite
jail.
explain. Yeah, like you're in jail or whatever, like you you live as a recluse, you're completely off the
Hmm.
grid, whatever it is, whatever like sort of like unique element of the conclusion of their personal life story.
Hmm.
And so it makes you go, oh, I want to know more about their life. And then you work not backwards. It's weird because it's not working backwards. It's you
Yeah.
give
It's
basically
jumping
that,
around,
yeah, you give
but in
that
chronological
character's
order.
ending, and
Yeah.
then you go start at the beginning of their story,
Hmm.
and then you walk up to not even necessarily the end that the book starts at, but like the end of the climactic thing that changed their life.
Yeah.
And then you go back to, and this is where I'm at now.
Hmm. Yeah. I do like the version of telling someone else's story. And I think if you kind of are like, I don't know which one of those I like best, you can have the person telling their own story without them saying it's their own story, right?
I
I can't think of an
love that.
example, but like when they're like, well, I knew this girl and here's her story. And then it gets to the end and you realize that was that person the whole
Yep.
time. That's
Yep.
kind of a nice twist and a little extra element. And you can drop
Isn't
hints
that
about
Titanic?
that.
Titanic. Yeah?
I think you know it's her, but yes, that is also a
Oh,
frame
you do
story.
know it's her? I
I
just
think
wasn't paying
so.
attention, so I didn't realize till the very end. I was like, oh no, it's her. Because
Yeah,
I watched it
but
against my will.
oh,
It's a
interesting.
good
I love
story.
Titanic.
I
Yeah,
didn't want to watch a sad movie, so
that's fair. It's super sad. I don't
yeah.
watch it a lot often because it's so sad. But that is
Yeah.
also a frame story. That's
Uh-huh.
so she's like going into her past and telling you what happened. But yeah, if you didn't want to say who it was, like take the Titanic, for instance. You could have, this old lady telling this story, and then you could have like several young women on the Titanic that are all being
Mm-hmm.
treated kind of equally in terms of the story.
Yep.
And you don't know which one she ultimately ends up being. She can have some kind of a
Yep.
nickname or she's always called grandma or whatever because of, the person she's telling the story to. And
Yeah.
then you can figure out based on like all of the other girls dying or some kind of little twist at the end, like she has the necklace and you know that this girl had the necklace or whatever. That only makes sense if you've seen the movie Titanic, so hopefully you guys have seen it. But you could do it that way as well, where it's like a little bit of a mystery who's even telling the story. And I think that's a good way to keep up suspense without making the reader feel like it won't be a satisfying ending because sometimes you
Yeah.
do run that risk of how are these even related? I don't really care. These things seem too distant or it seems too obvious. That can be a good way to say, I know there's going to be a satisfying ending and that I'm going to figure out who is finally telling this story, but I don't know who it is yet. And I can go on that journey to figure it out. So that's kind
Yeah.
of a good way to do that.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask why you particularly were attracted to frame stories now, but now I'm remembering that you said because the book
Yeah.
you're writing is a frame story.
I
Is
know.
there a
Okay.
particular reason that you
Yes.
okay, go for it.
So this it's a little bit different than what we've been talking about. So I also think that frame stories are really cool when it comes to anthologies. So 1001 Nights does this. A lot of horror anthologies do this as well, where like you
Oh
have this
yeah.
person kind of walking into a graveyard and the guy's pointing out the gravestones and telling you the story of how they died and it's a horror story and whatever. So basically the main character of this book, and I didn't plan this at first, so it just happened. She's an oral storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't write stories, she tells them. And so at various points in the story, she will tell like this big long story that takes up like 20 pages. And so she's the frame story, but she's also the focus, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's a little different where the weight is put on the frame story instead of the central story, which I think is a really interesting style and format. So I'm getting to
Interesting.
put in all these little like stories I could have made short stories, like the ideas I had, but they didn't feel quite enough to even carry a short story, but they can carry as a part of like an anthology or a whole or whatever. And so
Interesting.
I've just been thinking about that a lot lately and how cool I think that is. And the pacing is really tough because I'm like, okay, I have to keep up the suspense for this main story because the frame story is the main story.
Yeah.
Um, but I want there to be good, like low moments, and then to fill those low moments with these other stories. So the beats are just different, and I can't tell if I'm doing it well, but I think it would be really cool. It will be really cool once I have it done and like figured out. And because I know that I really like the idea of doing an anthology that way. Like if
Yeah.
you're thinking about doing a short story collection or even like a poetry collection, doing a frame story is a really cool way to, weave all of them together because they
Yep.
can be thematically similar, but then they can be a little different. And
And
the
then you
the
can draw in an
similarity is the
audience.
narrator.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can draw an audience that
exactly.
would not typically go to an anthology because
Right.
spoiler if you're new to the field. Sorry also if my voice is a little faded. I was kind of turned away from the microphone with my child. I don't know if you can hear him sucking on his pacifier, but it's quite loud. Um,
Oh.
a lot of people don't read anthologies. That's basically a
Yeah.
collection of short stories or poetry. A lot of people don't read those. So if you do it in a frame story, it's also a way to get to utilize that creativity that you have, but in a format that's more appealing to more people. And I do really like that. I will also say what's great about the frame story is you can combine it with like any other type of story. Like I
Hmm.
started writing a book that was a frame story and it was an epistolary novel. So it was
Yeah.
like the flashback of she's telling, basically she's getting you up to date on how she got where she is through a
Hmm.
series of letters and
Yeah.
diary entries.
Yeah.
So you can like combine a bunch of things, which is just
Hmm.
very, very handy. And it is
Yeah.
weird that we don't do it more.
Yeah. It's good in
Yeah.
any genre. Like
Yep.
horror does a lot. I think fantasy should do it more, especially if you're looking for a way to kind of differentiate yourself from the field, because especially YA fantasy is so big right now that
Hmm.
it's sometimes you just, you read the back of the book and you're like, well, yeah, that's like everything else. Even though if
Yeah.
you started to read it, it would not feel that way. It would feel like a separate story, but getting people to read it, I think we're kind of hitting a point in certain genres, and I think YA fantasy is one of them, where you need to have that little extra edge of like, and it's told in second person, and it's told in a frame story, and it's
Hmm.
told, past and future or whatever, because you just need to get that person to pick up the book and not feel like it's going to be the same old, even though
Hmm.
it's not the same old because it's a different author and it's a different story. I mean, you could get repetitive and you don't want to do that, but a lot of books, sometimes you read the back and you're like, well, that just sounds like everything else that got
Yeah,
published
you're like,
last year.
I bet I can predict how it ends.
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
if you do the frame story or do something else a little different, like get creative with the format, I think that's like a good way. And I don't know how it works for agents because I haven't queried this book yet. But potentially that could be the thing that causes them to say, yeah, I think there's a niche for this in the market.
Yeah.
So,
And it's true. Like you bring up a good point. On a normal book, like when people are reading the back cover, I feel like your brain kind of goes to, well, what's the ending? Can I predict it or not? It's just kind of like an immediate, oh, and or they even lead you up to it. They're like, what is this character gonna do,
yeah.
basically?
Like I bet
But
I know.
exactly, but the frame story is interesting because it tells you, it starts with how it ended.
Right.
And then you go back and you learn the rest of it. So the focus for the frame story is not on, well, how does this terrifying situation end?
Hmm.
It's how did it start and what happened and how did we get
Right.
where we are? Which is very
Yep.
interesting because you're not writing to the ending of the character's story. You're writing to the moment that changed their life, which
Right.
is so interesting. And I like that
Hmm.
also because it's more representative of how life is, It's not like this one great story of my life and now my life is over. Like
Hmm.
I have like a million we every day and every week that we do this podcast, we're like, what'd you do for the last 2 weeks? And
Yeah.
then we talk about it, right?
Your
We're not
life kept
like,
going.
exactly, your life kept going on. That wasn't like, and I was overwhelmed and I didn't get the garden planted. The end.
Yeah, exactly.
Not how it works. But someday, if I'm like, writing my memoirs or something, a frame
Hmm.
story could be a great way to do a memoir. Where I'm like, this is where I'm at now, sitting in my rocking chair, looking out on
Yeah.
the sunset over this countryside. Hopefully, if there's any rural land left by then, maybe not. And my child will hopefully be visiting with his wife who doesn't hate me. And I'll be like, how did I get here? Allow me to reflect back and then I'll
Right.
tell the story because the story is not about where you end up, it's about how you got there. The frame story is
Hmm.
like the epitome of it's not about the destination, it's
It's
about
the
the journey.
journey. That's true.
But it's
It
true.
is. Hmm. Yeah. It does also kind of, I don't know if you'll like this or agree with this, but it sort of makes the story feel a little more like puzzle piecey. So like, if
Yes,
you're
that
just
is why I like it.
because you're fitting together pieces, and so you know the ending and you're like, okay, but there are only so many ways they could have gotten here, and so as each event is occurring in that center story, you're like, aha, that's how this thing happened, and this is why they're there, and this is why that's who this person was or whatever. And so those pieces are kind of coming together, and I think that can make a really satisfying ending as well. I'm trying to think, I can't think of a frame story where I wasn't satisfied with the ending at least a little bit. And I think that might be why, because
Because you kind of
regardless
already
of,
know the ending.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
just looking for that final piece to say, okay, I get it. I'm satisfied, right? I
Yeah.
know who the narrator is now, or I know why this relationship didn't work out, or why it did, or why they're sitting on this bench. or, whatever.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I
it's
was
a
gonna say
good
it's
way.
I love it too because genres that I wouldn't typically read, it makes more interesting. Like I
Yeah.
don't typically read chick lit. I don't typically read slice of life. I don't read realistic fiction. Typically, it's not my jam because I just don't find it as interesting or engaging. But
Hmm.
if we're talking frame story, and I don't have all of the details for how we got where we are, then it also has this like element of like mystery and anticipation,
Yeah.
like you were saying at the beginning of the episode,
Hmm.
where I might actually pick that up. So I do think, I mean, I think anticipation and answering questions, I feel like that's something that appeals to everyone who reads fiction. So in
Hmm.
that sense, it really widens your audience base. Not that you're going to
It's true.
necessarily market to just basically everyone, because that's impossible, but it does, it does increase the appeal for your
Hmm.
story inherently.
Yep. I agree. I think I am really like motivated to read or watch something if I find out it's a frame story because it also feels like you can be, depending on how distant the frame story is from the actual story, you'll probably find one of the two that you at least like, even if you don't like the other.
Yeah.
So, in something like Canterbury Tales, right? It's these traveling people. If you guys haven't read it, we had to read it because it's an English lit thing. But it's like these people traveling on this pilgrimage, and each of them is telling a story, like basically to pass the time. And if you get to one story and you're like, I didn't like that, that was boring, you still have all these other stories that might appeal to you. And so there might be a couple duds in there, or at least to any particular person at any time. But it kind of has something for everyone in that sense. So
Yeah.
in
I
that
agree.
style, at least.
I agree. Sorry, my child is
Baby crying.
he's like crying and then he has a giggle fit. He's like getting hysterically tired. This is what he does.
Aw.
He'll like start crying. Then he's like, wait, mom is so funny. And then he's like, wait, I'm upset. And he's like, wait, mom is so funny.
Ah.
Is that right, Bubba? Say mommy's funny sometimes. He's like, I'm gonna get mad.
And disappear.
I know, there you go.
Aw,
He's like, I'm gonna eat my lamb. That's what I'm gonna do.
that's
That's called
better.
mutton.
Um, let's see what else. Um, I was gonna ask you this. So, if you had something like the Canterbury Tales, or where someone is telling either multiple people or one person is just kind of telling multiple stories, they're not necessarily related, it's more anthology style or just occasionally in the story. Do you like italics? Do you like quotations? Parentheses? Separate chapters? What do you think the best way to do that is?
I
Thoughts?
have mixed feelings. I
Okay.
prefer italics. But
Okay.
for the best user experience, quote unquote, and this is because somebody at my work opened my eyes to this recently, italics in large chunks of text can be difficult for some people to read. So,
Ah.
practically speaking, probably just making a new chapter. And I am a big fan of
Mm-hmm.
having chapters of different lengths. I love not knowing, like, how long is this chapter going to be? It's like
Mm-hmm.
a really long chapter, and then it's like a page, and then you go to the next chapter. And
Yeah.
I love that. So, I think that maybe this is an opportunity where setting aside my personal preference for italics, like if I had to make a recommendation, I would say
Mm-hmm.
as a separate chapter.
Interesting. Okay,
My
cool.
offspring agrees.
Yeah.
Wow, that's his agreement with mommy.
Yeah,
Correct?
obviously, because
Yeah,
she's correct.
yeah. About most things. Tell your
Obviously.
father, would you? Thanks.
Because so this is another kind of frame story question, I guess. I'm doing like sometimes the people will interject into the story, right? So the people that are listening will say
Ooh,
things because
I
I
love it.
really like that. And I think that
Mhm.
happens in The Princess Bride, at least the
Yes.
movie, right? The kid kind of is like, "Wait, what about this thing?" And the grandfather's like, "Hold on, I'm getting there."
Yep,
Or like it
absolutely.
changes as he tells it. So I'm doing like these little interjections. So I've been doing the quotations. And oh boy, is it hard. Like, this is the only time I think in my life where I've just been like, I'm gonna not think about it right now and come back later. Like, normally I am the get the grammar right on the first try, get the punctuation right on the first try kind of thing. But
Yeah.
there are like 4 layers deep of quotes in some places. And I'm like, is this impractical or is this clear if I just do it right? So, because I want them to eventually be able to interject, which means it is a separate chapter. I'm also doing that. So you kind of have the idea that the main point of this chapter is the center story, the little center story.
Yeah.
But I want them to interject, so there's also the quotation element. So I don't know. I just think that's something to think about because like you said, if your frame story is kind of like a distant thing, I wouldn't do italics for the center story because that is a lot of italics. But maybe
Yeah.
you do italics for the frame story if it's only a small piece. Or I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe you do it in kind of like a separate chapter, you're not using the quotations, and then if someone interjects, you just use parentheses, which could work.
Ooh, I like that
Um,
concept. I think another
yeah,
thing
maybe
you
I'll
could
try
do
that.
is do like a section break, which I are not
Mm,
utilized enough. I love a good section break.
yeah.
Helen Dunmore is the queen of section breaks, I feel like, in my opinion. Um,
Hmm.
but like you could do like, something, let's say that the frame story that's happening is like he swung his sword and then there's a hyphen
Yeah.
or sorry, an M dash, my
Yeah.
faves. And then you do the section break and then you start with the quote with the quotation marks and it's whoever interrupted. So like, oh my God, he didn't. Or
Yeah.
why would he do that?
What's
And
gonna
then
happen? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then another section break and then you go back into the frame story. So I feel like section
Yeah.
breaks, if it's just like a short interruption of like a
Hmm.
little brief conversation, I think a section break is the best probably method. I do like parentheses
Yeah.
too. It's very
Yeah.
much a tone thing. I feel like if you're going to pick one or
Mm.
the other, it's like what kind of, voice are you going for?
Yeah. I think parentheses probably makes it feel like you're deeper into that center story, whereas the section break probably makes them feel a little more equal. So it
Yeah.
depends on which one are you trying to weight them about the same, or is one heavier than the other?
Yep.
Do you guys know what I mean when I say weight?
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
the amount of words, like if you have 100,000 word book, how many of them are the frame story? 10,000 or like 50,000 or
Yeah.
like 70,000? Because mine's probably going to come out to more like 70,000, like 70% is the frame story
Yeah.
because the point is the frame story as opposed to the center stories.
Yeah.
Um, so in that case, I maybe the parentheses would be too distant, or would that be more immersive? I don't know. I guess,
I
but it
think
is
it's
a
more
tone thing. Maybe I'll
immersive.
try it. Yeah.
I think more immersive. I think it's more like when you're watching a show that has it's a frame story, but when there's an interruption, it's just a voiceover instead of cutting away.
Ah,
Versus The
yes.
Princess Bride, where when there's a voiceover, they do cut away and they show the
Yeah.
grandfather with the grandkids or
Yeah,
grandchild. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I agree. That's kind of the equivalent there. Um, yeah. Is that all I had to say? Do you have anything else to say?
Not on frame stories
That was so
specifically.
abrupt. I was like, am I done?
Oh, you're like, I'm never done this early.
I'm never. What
Um,
time is it? I will just say, just last point, because I always do that. Um, if you're doing the anthology thing, I do think you can be a little looser in how much the stories all relate to one another, but there should be some kind of central theme and something kind of being noticed. So like one of the things I'm doing, I'll just tell you guys, um, there's a love interest, right? And these little details of the stories that she's telling are kind of like details he's latching onto. So it's not necessarily obvious why they're all related, except that they're telling you about her as a character, right? So instead of
yeah,
necessarily showing her actions, it's more like here's the kind of story she would write, and that tells you what kind of a person she is. Um, but they are obviously thematically similar in the sense that the same person is writing them. So there's
yeah,
got to be some kind of common thread, but it can be like a really loose thread versus if it's something like Princess Bride, it's got to be a kind of a heavy thread because it's
yeah,
one story basically. So yeah.
yeah. I agree. I don't think I have any summarizing comments on frame stories. Um, I like them. Let's see more of them. Let's
Yeah.
really see them in the genres that some of us think are kind of boring, like
Mm-hmm.
hashtag realistic fiction, literary fiction, chick lit. And
Yeah.
that's absolutely no offense to you if you write those genres. They're
Mm-hmm.
excellent. However, some of us do not have the focus.
Mm-hmm.
We've been raised on superheroes and action movies, and I need a
Exactly.
little more like intrigue to get me
Mm-hmm.
in there. And that's really what the frame story adds is like this level of intrigue.
Yep.
Um, Probably was my favorite part of watching Titanic was I just want to find out about the old lady. Like what was her whole
Yeah.
story? And I
Exactly.
mean, it was not apparently a secret that she was the one the story was about the whole time, but I was still like, I want to know what happened to her. So
Yeah.
that helped. Even though it was a tragedy, and I do not, as a rule, watch or read tragedies. So I just looked behind me and my husband is
That was
standing in the
perfect
door
timing.
frame with his arm up. Do you see him?
He
I
kind of
like,
appeared a little bit like a
yeah.
ghost.
Every time I put my arm through the green screen, it's like there he is.
Yep.
Can I help you? What? No. No. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm gonna have a microwave lean cuisine thing. Yeah. I made French fries for my husband, but since I'm already off refined sugar for Lent, I'm trying to just eat healthier and be like, maybe we'll see if I can. Shut up. He bought donuts because he hates me.
My dad gave up donuts for Lent. So I'm
Oh,
gonna
that's
tell him that.
hilarious. Is that a common thing? Do you guys usually have donuts?
My dad does, yeah. He like
Oh.
goes out to the grocery store on weekends and he'll just like buy a box. So
Shut up. He goes, classic glazed, which is my favorite. If you
yeah.
guys are new here, donuts are like my probably all-time favorite dessert, maybe followed by like soft chocolate chip cookies. My
That
child just
expression.
tried to rip the microphone off my desk. Could
Oh
you let go?
no,
He's like, no. Do you see
it's
this?
mine.
He's determined. Can I have it
Aw, that
back?
little grip.
He's like, yes, I am very strong. My hands are huge. Anyways, I guess that's should be my cue to move on to writing updates.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of already talked about it a little bit. I'm writing a new
Mhm.
book and I'm very excited about it, and it's a frame story, and it's really hard for me to focus on anything else,
Can
which
you
is
tell us
probably part of
anything
why I'm
else
stressed.
about this story?
Um, I guess I don't know if this is going to make it sound good or bad. So it's a little bit a like response to the insta love trope, because I hated the
Interesting.
insta love trope, but I'm kind of doing
Really?
something a little
Bless you.
different with it. So it takes place over 7 days. And there's like this curse. And the guy's like, I need someone to love me in 7 days. And she's like, well, that's not going to happen because that's too soon. He's like, I bet I can. And so, like, there's going to be a little bit of a twist at the end, and I'm excited about it. So
He learns to love
it's
himself.
maybe, but it's like it's not insta love. Like, I don't want it to come across that way because that always really annoyed me. So that's not
Yeah.
what it is,
So
but
this is like your
it's
version of like if Insta Love was done correctly
yeah,
or
kind
in an
of.
acceptable way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm very
I
excited
like
about where
that.
it's going. And I did a cool scene the other day about a maze that came to life, but not in a creepy, scary way. So
Oh,
I was
that's
very
hard to
excited about that.
imagine. It sounds
Yeah,
terrifying.
I know, but it's more fun. It's more like a game, like a picture like a
Oh.
live chess game, but without death,
Oh,
like
okay.
Harry
I can
Potter.
see that. And I can
Yeah.
totally see that written like in your tone, like how you
Hmm.
write, like your voice. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm excited to read
So
this one.
I'm also really excited about one of the little center stories I did in the frame story. Okay, so first of all, I'm just gonna keep talking about it. She tells it like in the style of a Greek epic. So she's like
Hmm.
invoking the muses and stuff, and I'm really kind of going all out, and it's
Ooh,
very cool.
heck
It's
yeah.
it's the kind of thing that feels like it'll read really lame, but when I go
Yeah.
back and read it, I'm
I'm gonna
like, I
say you
think this
sound
actually
incredibly
works.
nerdy right now.
I know.
But I
But I
love
love
it.
it. And she's just like, oh, muse of this, like, tell me the story. And I'm so excited about it. But I told a sci-fi story in the middle of this fantasy book.
Oh my
And
God, I love
I
it.
think it works. And I'm very excited about that.
I love it.
Did you ever, I doubt you have you, any of you read Jane Unlimited by Kristen Kishore? She wrote
No.
Graceling.
Mm-mm.
So I love Jane Unlimited. It's basically this book. It actually is a good example of a frame story, but the main character kind of shows up at this house, and there are all these little clues that you get in the first couple chapters, and then it branches off as if the book were a different genre. So like it goes off on the horror branch, and then the murder mystery branch, and then the sci-fi branch. It's the same initial story, but like different twists as it goes along. So it's kind of like an alternate universe type of thing about like
Hmm.
what if this was a murder mystery, what if this was a thriller, etc. And there's a sci-fi element to that book, and that just felt so interesting to me when I read it. I'm like, how does this work in a book that started off feeling like it was going to be a fantasy and or just like a murder mystery or a ghost story? And so I've been kind of toying with that idea, and I think it works. So I'm very excited about it.
Ooh, I
Yeah.
love that.
So
Very cool.
yep. What about you? Tell us more about your sudden explosion of writing.
It
I don't
was
know.
very sudden explosion of writing. And here's what happened. I typed into the Google box. I said, "How do you write with an infant?"
Oh, nice.
not like how do you write a book like, with an infant. Like I'm not like he's not like a co-author. But
Oh,
basically at this point he kind of is.
yeah.
And so anyways, I came across this thing from FreeWrite. And if you guys don't know, I have a FreeWrite typewriter that I love.
Hmm.
But basically it was this woman, it was sort of an advertisement for their FreeWrite Travel, which is like my FreeWrite typewriter, but it's tiny and you can fold it in half and take it with you. And I want one so bad, and they're very expensive. But basically she was saying that she was crediting it all to the FreeWrite Traveler because she was like, you have to learn to be able to write in shorter spurts of time. Like you can't,
Hmm.
if you're someone who, like me, has to like sit down and
Yeah.
have like I meant thank you, like a minimum of 2 hours to write at a time, like 2 to 6
Hmm.
hours of writing. It is so hard to get more than
Yeah.
like 30 minutes, absolute maximum if the baby's asleep, to myself. So
Yep.
instead, you have to learn how to write in shorter spurts. And she was saying what's great about the Pre-Write Traveler is you can just take it with you, like literally just keep it in your bag. And then just if your baby's in the crib, if you're out somewhere, like if you're waiting in like a line in the drive-through, you can whip out the little keyboard and just type away. And so I can't afford a Free-Write Traveler, but I was like, what's the next best thing to see if I can even write this way? And I've never been able to before. Is they are like for like 30 to $50. There are little keyboards that unfold. They fold up
Yeah.
and they go in your bag, and I have Microsoft Word on my phone. So I have started using my little $30 keyboard, unfolding
Wow.
it, turning it on, and at night, but right before I've been going to sleep, I'll just whip that out because I don't have to like hunt down my computer and the charge cord and boot it up and then open my file. I can just flick open my phone, click on Microsoft Word, my file opens up because it's already right there, and I literally just turn on my keyboard. And it's great
Hmm.
because I can sit in bed and do it. I could take it to the kitchen. I've been putting it in my purse. Not that I go out very often, but when I do, I'm taking it with me in case I have to like sit somewhere and wait for my grocery order to be delivered to my car if I go to curbside. And I
Hmm.
can write my story. And I have like 4 chapters, which is great. And it
Nice.
is a
It
thriller.
works.
Yeah, it's a thriller.
Yeah.
So that's very exciting because I've never written one
Cool.
before. And I'd been saying,
Yeah.
like, I feel like I need to write a thriller. And I'm not going to give away too much, but I will say it is split perspective, which I always have very mixed feelings about because I often don't like it. But that's just how the story is coming to me. It's told from the perspective of two sisters. One of them is kind of the main character also, which is kind of weird, is kind of based off my little sister, which is very odd.
Oh,
But
interesting.
also Maddie out there, I mean inspired by, okay? Madison is my sister. Maddie, it's if this character does or says things you wouldn't do, it's because she's inspired by, okay?
Not based on.
Yeah, not based on, I should say, inspired by. Um, and so she's kind of the main character, and her sister goes missing unexpectedly. And so it's told from her trying to investigate her sister's disappearance. And then the split perspective is told from her sister who's missing and
Hmm.
like where she's at and what's going on. And there's a cult involved. So that's exciting.
Ooh.
I think the sister split perspective thing is interesting, and you're gonna get little
Hmm.
hints at their background. Um, I'm very, very engaged in this, and I've been reading thrillers constantly, and I feel more compelled to finish this than even my Cinderella retelling that I really like. But I think it's
Hmm.
that concept of like when you watch a thriller or a mystery and you're like, well, I have to get to the end to find out how it ends, right?
Hmm.
So I think I'm like a little more driven than usual to actually finish it. So fingers crossed,
Nice. You've been like
knock on
studying
wood.
it for the past, I don't know how long you've been reading thrillers, but you're like, I have
For
all
like
this
a
new knowledge
year.
now. I need to write my own.
I really have been studying it for like a
Hmm.
year. And I finally, and I like a few months ago, I was like, I should try and write a thriller. And then I was like, I don't feel like I'm quite there yet. And then I
Hmm.
read a few more thrillers, and all of a sudden it like clicked. And my brain was like,
Yeah.
you could totally do this now. So, anyways, if you're anyone out there like me, you're like struggling to write, or you're writing something and you're just struggling to feel motivated, maybe try reading outside of your usual genre. And it might take a while, not just one book. Might take
Right.
several, might take 6 months worth of reading, might take a year. But you never know what's going to call to you. So I'm definitely not leaving my fantasy, science fiction, or young adult behind by any means, because I
Yep.
still love it all. But I am working on this thriller, and my hopes are that because I feel very motivated to finish it, even like quote unquote as a reader of it, that I will, if I can finish it, I'll feel more motivated and capable of like finishing some of my other stuff.
Hmm.
Because I
Yep.
feel like I usually go through like kind of like phases of like finishing some things and then querying them for like a few years while I like toy
Yeah.
with other things. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of hoping that I'm about to go through that quote unquote
Cool.
phase.
Yeah.
Uh Anyways, so I'm excited about it and I'm
Exciting.
enjoying it. And I'm only
Yeah.
writing for like literally like 15 minutes to an hour and a half at a time. Like that's
Oh,
kind of my range, which
life
is,
change.
yeah, it's hard and it's very hard. But with the
Yeah.
working 60 hours a week and it's planting season and I have an infant and it's just a normal house with chores that have to be done, it's the
That's
best
the
I
way.
can do. It's the way. So it's hard, but I do recommend the Google box and look at how other people have done it because pretty much anything is figure outable. You just have to,
True.
it helps to see how other people figured it out. Even if it's a way that you swore you could never ever write.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been
Anyways.
writing on like my lunch breaks, which are half hours and like in 15-minute spurts. And a year ago me would have been like never. And now I'm just like, I have to. I have no other time to do this.
Yeah.
So,
It's
yeah.
weird. You do what you got to do when you got to do it. So,
Yep.
so no one out there be like, "Oh, my life's too busy. Writing was just a hobby or a little dream of mine, and I don't have time for it now." You can do it, even if
You
it
can.
takes you 10 years and you only write 15 minutes here and there. You can do it, and
It'll
it's worth
happen.
it. It's worth it. Yeah, Riley's like, "It's not worth it."
Don't do it. Don't listen to her.
He's like, "It takes away time from me." You're already asleep usually by the time that I'm writing, so that's
Hmm.
not true. Yeah, I know. Oh my God, it's so hard to be a baby.
While you sleep, it's so hard. Yeah, it's too
Yeah.
hard.
I swear he knows when he's being made fun of because he always smiles. He's like, haha,
Aw,
that's true. It's funny.
they're talking about me.
Yeah, we talking about you. He's like, I'm gonna get mad now because I'm tired and hungry and I think I have a dirty diaper. So, with that, I will move into our signing off, which is to say, if you guys liked this episode or any of our episodes, or even just the sound of our voices or one of the things we said today, please give us a positive rating and share us with your friends. We want to grow the writing group, and the best way to do that is word of mouth. So, please, if you know any writers out there, readers out there who are toying with the idea of writing, send them our way. You can also join our writers group. The link is on Discord and it is in the description below. If you guys want to learn more about the podcast, you can do that at the scripturient.society.com or storysirenstudio.com. That's a production company. You can also email contact@storysirenstudio.com if you have episode suggestions or if you just want to talk to us. If you're watching on YouTube, do you like the way I'm twisting away from the microphone to try and minimize my baby noise?
I love it.
See, Carissa likes it. That's all that matters. See, I winked at Carissa, which she does not typically enjoy.
No.
Also, I usually say this first, but now I'm gonna say it last because saving the best for last. Follow us on social media. The Scripturient Society is on Instagram and we are on TikTok, and it is all Carissa's masterpieces, and it is so funny and encouraging, and will give you a little laugh and a giggle and keep you motivated throughout your week. There's lots of like tips if you miss an episode. There's little summaries and some inside jokes that really only writers and readers would understand. So please go follow us on there. And I think that's everything that we've got for you guys. So until next week, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.
Yeah.